salvia quite a few times, which if you've never done salvia, that one is demonic. Dream where I was like struggling with a lion and I turned it into like a little cat, and it was psychedelics that we did, like everything that we were doing. We got into mushrooms. And if you were given the true choice, I believe so many people would repent and go to Christ.
My brothers and sisters in Christ, welcome to the Isha Christian Network. My name is Isha, and we've got a very, very special guest on our show today. Her name is Anastasia, joining me all the way from Canada, and she's got an amazing, amazing testimony filled with brilliant messages, a life that has been from the worst times to the best possible time in Christ, and she's here to share a message with you guys. So please welcome her to the channel. Please keep us in your prayers as well. And I'm going to leave the floor to her. She's going to give you her story. And please like, share, and subscribe. And Anastasia, I leave the floor to you, my friends.
Hi. Hi. Yeah, my name is Anna. So it's hard to know where to start, actually. There's so many places I could start. Well, I was born in Alberta, a different province from where I live now. I my mother my mother left my father, my biological father, very shortly after I was born. She actually said that I saved her because he was a very abusive person. So that turned out to be a good thing in the end. Shortly after that, she met my stepfather, who was actually friends with my biological father, which is an interesting tidbit I just learned a couple years ago. My sister was born, so I have one sibling, a younger sister. She was born 4 years after me. And I think my mother was my introduction into New Age. She was all about law of attraction and manifesting and just everything. And my mom is like the sweetest, most genuine person ever. So it was easy for me to follow her guidance. I never had a church. I never had Christ. I never had a Bible in our house. Nothing. I remember going to church once. The one person who I remember being religious in my family was my stepfather's mom, my grandma, and she is a Catholic. And I remember going to church once. I must have been only 3 years old, and they were handing out the flesh of Christ, the Eucharist, and I wanted one of the cookies. And they said no. And I just learned recently, because I was wondering why they wouldn't let me. And I guess you need to be a certain age to actually receive that in the Catholic Church. And I didn't know that. And at the time, I just remember being told no. And I was so upset. Everybody else could have one, but I couldn't. And I was just crying. I was having a tantrum. So that's what I remembered about church. And, and so, so yeah, it's hard to know really where to go from there.
Yeah, so in regards to your childhood, so obviously you mentioned that your mum, did she marry your dad's friend after, or were they kind of just together?
Yeah, very shortly after. I want to say within the year. They basically ran away together with me, and then very shortly after, they eloped. They eloped and got married. I wasn't even a part of the wedding, actually, and it's interesting because I realized, because of that, because of how they got married, I still had my mom's maiden name, and I was the only one in our family, especially after my sister was born, who had a different last name. So it kind of made sense now, looking back on it, why I felt quite outcasted, and I didn't even realize it. But it was little things like that where every they had their last name, they had their little family, it felt, and I was kind of the oddball out. I was kind of on the outside, it felt. And I don't think I realized how much that actually affected me until very recently. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what did you know about your mum's spiritual beliefs from an early age? And how young were you when you really kind of started to understand what it was that she believed in and practiced?
She always talked about manifesting. She would always say things like, one thing she always says is, whatever you believe, you are right. And so it always felt like I struggled with it too, though, because I didn't. I struggled with my mental health as a kid. I I was like the weird girl. I had a hard time making friends in school, um, and then I didn't feel very much at home in my family either. I just felt very out of place. I didn't feel comfortable in my body, um, and it got worse too. There was several times throughout my childhood where I was molested, and I remember there was a very pivotal point where I went from being a little girl who liked wearing pretty dresses, and I loved my long hair. These memories just started resurfacing within the last couple of years, but so it all kind of came together and started making sense. But there was a pivotal moment where I went from being this little girl who liked wearing pretty dresses to wanting to chop off all of my hair, and I dressed like a boy. I was a tomboy, and it it almost seemed to happen overnight. I gained a lot of weight really quickly, and I look back now, and I never went through or felt as if I was a boy or wanted to be a boy, but I think that I subconsciously thought little girls get molested, so it's better to be a boy. It's better to look like a boy, and so I wanted nothing to do with dresses anymore. I wanted nothing to do with girls at all. Girls were unsafe to me for a very long time, actually. Um, Being a girl and being around them, I didn't want anything to do with it really. Um, so yeah, it was just it was difficult. It was difficult at home and it was difficult at school. It was just kind of constantly being picked on, and I always just kind of felt like the weird one.
Mm.
My So when my mom would say things like, "You, whatever you think, you were right," I didn't feel like much guidance to me because my thoughts weren't the best. And I'm like, that sucks. I don't I don't want to be right because I just didn't have much guidance. Like my parents would even say things like I would go to them with my problems and how I felt, and they would just say, don't feel that way. How do you not feel that way? I do feel that way. This is how I feel. But
Yeah.
they didn't really teach me how to regulate my emotions or anything. And though my stepfather was never physically abusive toward me, uh, I grew up around a lot of screaming and a lot of yelling, and um, it was difficult for me to hear someone tell me that I need to regulate my emotions and to behave a certain way when this adult telling me to do it couldn't do it himself. And so we
Mm.
always butted heads growing up, especially when I started having my own opinions and just not agreeing with him on certain things. We fought all the time. Yeah. So, and I watched them fight a lot too. Um, my mom's I told my mom when I was first saved that I was saved by Jesus, and she said that she believes him, that she believes Jesus exists, and she told me she was a believer. And I went back and looked at some photos, and I have one of her where she's wearing a cross, and he's on the cross. And so I think there was a time, and she had me very young too. She was only 21 when she had me. Um, so I believe there was a time where she was close with Christ, and I do believe somewhere along the way she got lost in the New Age movement as well, and it's easy to see how, like, it's so deceptive. And and it's so appealing. It's so appealing to think that you can manifest these things. Like she even told me when she was with my biological father that she didn't want to be with him, that she wanted a way out, and she would at night sit there and manifest. She would have like this bubble where she would imagine my stepdad and me and like our family, and she would send it away into the universe, and like just this manifesting these little things that she would do. She told me she believed in reincarnation, and she believed that when people talk about the white light that you see when you die, it's the same white light that you see when you're born. And so when you die, you're just being reborn into the world again. And so those are the kind of ideas that I subscribed to for a long time, and was kind of raised in. Yeah. And it just law of attraction. I remember my grandma had my mom's mom had the Desiderata poem on the wall, which is, you're a child of the universe, not a child of God, right? And it's all
Mm.
these little counterfeit things that I was surrounded by, and I didn't even realize at the time. And then at the same time, we never talked about those things very much either. Like, we never talked about death. We never talked about afterlife. Even when my uncle died, who we were all very close with, it wasn't spoken about. And that's when the fear of death really overtook me. And I was 13 years old. I never thought about death. I never thought about these things. Uh, we had hamsters. That was like the extent of it. Like when the hamster Hammy died, we'd bury it. We'd have a little hamster funeral, but like we we didn't talk about we didn't talk about death. We didn't talk about what happens or what they really believed in. It. These things that I knew about my mom were just kind of things that she would randomly say here and there that would come up, but there was never an actual discussion about it. And and so when my uncle died, it was such a shock to my system because I was close with him. He was one of my favorite people in the world. And all of a sudden he was gone. And it was like, where did he go? And I didn't really have anyone to talk to about it or a place to go to talk to about it. So the fear of death just overtook me for a long time. I felt atheism just made sense. I felt that, we're worm food. We live and we die, and then there's nothing. And that just paralyzed me. It paralyzed me to think that one day I wasn't going to exist. It was it was the worst fear in the world. I would sit there and not sleep for days. And if I did, I would cry myself to sleep. It was just this existential feeling where it was like falling into a void of darkness every single night. And I'm only 13 years old at this point, and I just felt like I didn't have anyone to talk to about any of this,
Could I
and I
quickly
didn't.
stop you? So
Yep.
what I was going to suggest, could you kind of talk me through your journey from what made you become an atheist and your journey through being an atheist, what you felt, what you learned, and how that then transitioned to the new age?
Yeah. So yeah, it was my uncle's death where I was first. That was like the pivotal moment where it was the first time I thought about death, about life and the meaning of it, and what is this? Where are we? What are we doing? Is there anything after? It was the first time I started asking these questions, and actually start on that journey. And it started in this atheistic spot because I had I remember wishing that I could believe in heaven because I knew people did. I didn't grow up around religion, but I knew that it existed. I knew that there were Christians, and I knew kind of about this Jesus guy. I saw him on the cross, and I didn't. That was like the one religion that I didn't end up studying and getting into. For some reason, I had such a strong aversion to it. I didn't. I just still don't really know why, but um so it started with atheism because that's just, I don't know, that was my starting point. It's just what made sense. Why would there be anything? I'm the kind of person who you can tell me something. but I'm not going to believe it until I experience it for myself. Like, you can say heaven exists, but like, who are you? Like, I need to, you're just another human. And I remember almost being angry because I was like, it's how do they believe this? How do they make themselves believe this? How do they trick their minds into believing this, is what I would think. Like, how, because I couldn't do it. I couldn't read something that is talking about there being an afterlife and then be like, okay, cool, I want to believe that, so I will. Like, I couldn't do that. I had to have some type of proof or some kind of something, some experience to solidify that for me. And so far, there, in my little child mind, there was nothing. There was nothing and no proof, and it didn't exist, so it must not exist. And that was horrifying to me. But it didn't stop my search. Like, I wasn't okay with that. I really wasn't. That's when my mental health just started just getting awful. The depression set in at about 13 years old, and that's where it really stemmed from. I didn't understand anything. And like, what is the point of any of this if there's nothing? And how cruel, how cruel to have a being to exist and actually be able to contemplate all of these things just to have them not exist after that. I just couldn't wrap my mind around it. And so I slowly started transitioning into being an agnostic, because I'm like, there has to be something. I just don't know what that is, but I want to know. So I started looking into to Buddhism, and I would even in school write papers about different religions and give them to my teachers. And Christianity again was the Bible was the one book I never opened, which is very interesting to me. But I what really got me to knowing that inner knowing that there was something, like, my mind was finally open. And I've always been someone who's been open to being wrong, and all of these different beliefs that I found myself pondering, I've never actually committed to any of them until now. And so I've always been open to being wrong. And it was it was the Spirit Science, actually, that YouTube channel.
Same trap.
It Uh-huh. Yeah, Spirit Science is where I look back, and it wasn't until I saw your testimony where that I remembered that show, and I was like, whoa, like, I remember that. I remember watching all of those videos, and I was like, this makes sense. This totally makes sense. There was a and again, I hadn't even read the Bible, so I didn't understand or see how it was such a counterfeit of the gospel, and like the fall, all of that, and how they
Mm,
took it and just kind of like, it's interesting because they give you just enough truth to have you believe it before they introduce these tiny little lies, right? and
mm,
and the counterfeits of it. And so it makes sense, and until you see the full truth and you look back and you go, okay, this is where it doesn't make sense. And so it was Spirit Science that kind of just started opening my mind to different possibilities, to thinking that, like, there's something here, and there's a lot of people who believe this. um and it was my boyfriend who introduced me to it at the time. He's like, you got to watch the show. And we would watch it together, and it would talk about lucid dreaming, and we thought that was just the coolest thing ever. I mean, we sleep every night, you can control your dreams, that's super cool. So we started learning how to do that together, and it took over both of our lives. Like, we we would do things like have reality checks throughout the day. There's this one where every couple hours throughout the day, I would be at school and I would try to push my fingers through the palm of my hand, because if I could do that, then that would mean I was dreaming. And then I would realize I'm dreaming. And if you do that
mm.
enough, then you'll do that in a dream, and then you'll wake up and realize to the fact you're dreaming, and then you can go fly around and do cool stuff, and or flicking on light switches, little things like that. And eventually, and we'd write down our dreams every morning. It got to the point where I had like several dream journals, just back to front, and every morning I would spend maybe an hour in the morning writing down my dream, because I just had the most insane details of it. And I got pretty good at lucid dreaming, which led into astral projection.
Mm.
Now I wanted to skip the whole falling asleep part and just leave my body. Like that seemed pretty cool. I wanted to do that. And spirit science again, that made it seem like a pretty cool thing to do. And they do it. It's funny because they have such a cute little cartoon with a little cartoon voice, so innocent, right? Such an innocent little
What harm can
cartoon
it
dude,
possibly do?
right? Exactly. It's like so so I started practicing to do that. I got pretty good at lucid dreaming and I loved it too. I love the feeling of being aware that I was in a dream. I remember talking to dream characters and being like, you know, you're a dream character, right? Like you know that you're in my dream, and like having conversations with these beings, and they would look at me like I remember the expressions on their face and these conversations. It's wild. It's absolutely wild the things I was doing. And I remember the first time I was practicing astral projection over and over again. And it's funny because people talk about sleep paralysis and how scary it is. I never had that. I I wanted that. I was practicing to into a state of sleep paralysis, because when you're trying to astral project, the whole point is to put your body asleep and keep your mind awake. So you're not falling asleep. You are trying to lay there completely still, and you'll feel the vibrations come over your
Mm.
body. And that's when you know, okay, stay still, and not don't move, don't swallow, don't do anything, and not to let your mind wander. And like you can feel it happening. And there's so many times where I'd feel the vibrations, and then I'd wake up and it would be a normal, I'm here still. So it was a frustrating thing to try and learn,
Yeah.
but I remember the exact moment where I succeeded, because I was sitting there, the vibrations came, and I was like, okay, stay calm, it's happening. And all of a sudden they stopped, and I was like, oh, I was disappointed because I'm like, I messed up again. And I sat up, and everything was totally normal. But then I turn around and there's someone in my bed. And I'm looking down on my bed. I'm like, this doesn't make sense. And I realize it's funny because we look at ourselves in the mirror, but we don't actually ever see our own face. So I literally
Yeah.
didn't recognize myself, right? And that's how I think about that often, because I'm like, you can say a lot of things about astral projection and if this is real or not, or if people can really do this, if it's a real thing. People who haven't done it are very skeptical about it. But that's one thing that always stood out and that really convinced me that these things are real, is because I was super confused. If I just wanted to believe this, then I know what my face looks like in a mirror. That's what I would have seen. That's what my brain would have conjured up, right?
Mm.
But this is someone that I've never seen before. I've never seen my actual face until that moment. And I was looking at my actual body. And that's when the fear of death first left me. And I thought that I figured everything out, because I was sitting there outside of my body, looking down at my body, and I still exist. And I was like, okay, so I can leave my body and still exist. That was the experience that I was looking for. That was the thing, the proof
Yeah.
that I had been searching for this whole time. And I was like, okay, so there is something, and I can leave my body, and this is okay. So my body is just a body and I am outside of it. I get it. Got it. Good. And I remember thinking when I first started getting into astral projection and doing this more often, that I I've heard stories, and I would be on Reddit and people would say, you know, I used to astral project, I used to do this, and I would think, why would you ever stop? Why would you? This is so cool. Like, why would you ever stop doing this? And I get it now. I understand why you stopped now. And the way that this overtook my life and how my life revolved around doing this is just, I look back and it's absolutely crazy. It's crazy. I would think about it all day long, like doing reality checks and practicing. Every time I'd go to sleep, I'm trying to do this. I'd wake up in the morning extra early so that I could try and astral project.
Yeah.
And I would have these beautiful experiences too that are like, they felt more real than this world. The air felt more real. food I would eat tasted better. This I saw colors that don't exist in
Yeah,
this world.
it's beautiful.
Uh, the wind, I remember sitting in a chair and feeling the cold wind on my arm. Like it is so real, and I don't think how I could ever describe that to anybody who hasn't experienced it. And if you have, then I don't need to, And so that yeah, that was kind of the introduction into all of it. And at the time, I didn't realize that was a gateway into the occult, into hermeticism, into just demonic activity. And the person who I mentioned, my boyfriend at the time, who I was doing all of this with, and we were very much into all of this together. Like we would try and meet up in the spirit world. We would try to we would lay next to each other in bed and then try to astral project and then meet up in the spirit world. So we were like very, very involved in this stuff, and we were both so convinced of all of this that this was like the way.
Just to quickly
And,
stop you.
yeah.
Sorry. Um,
Okay.
so for this section, I was actually gonna say, could you focus this section on how you met your boyfriend, how you both got into doing new age practices as a couple, and how it kind of transitioned on from there?
Hmm. So I'm not sure if I want to actually use his name or not, just because
Nah, don't use the name.
um,
It's okay.
yeah, I'm gonna not, just out of respect for in case
Yeah,
I
for
feel weird
family
about it
as
with
well and
his
stuff like that.
family. Yeah.
Yeah. Nah, keep them.
Um, but give me 1 second here. Duncan, come here. Go lay down, please. In your bed. All the way down. Thank you. Um, so yeah, I was friends with my boyfriend for quite a long time before we started dating. I met him when I first when my family moved cities, and I met him in elementary school. We were 13 and in the same class, and I just thought he was the cutest person ever. And here I'm this chubby little tomboy girl weirdo, and he was like my first like crush. Like I really liked him, and he was one of the only people, if not the only person, who never really picked on me. He was always nice to me. He never at first felt romantic feelings toward me, or he never had a crush on me for a very long time, but he was always nice to me. Sorry, my dog is being such a stinker. I'm gonna put him outside. 1 second.
Yeah, that's cool.
Like, Mom, who are you talking to? 1 sec. We're done. Okay, and my battery is going to die. 1 second. I don't know why.
Ugh,
Close
round
call.
three. Yeah. Right. I'll let you take the floor. Oh my
Sure.
words. I might even edit that out. Shocker.
uh, yeah. Okay. Um, so yes, so I met my boyfriend who introduced me into astral projection, lucid dreaming, spirit science, all these things. I met him before we were ever dating in elementary school. He was he was the cute boy in class when I first moved, when my parents moved to a different city. He was like he was the cute one, and he was like my very first crush. And he was also the only person who was consistently nice and genuinely nice to me. Like I said, I was the weird girl. I was the tomboy, and I had a very hard time making genuine friends. I had friends, but they were the kind of friends that would snicker behind my back, or like tease me in these little ways where I might have not showed how much it hurt, but I saw what they were doing and it hurt me. So I never felt like I could like trust many people or like I had many friends, but he was always genuinely nice to me. And so I always just appreciated him so much. And it wasn't until just before prom, just before graduation, that we started dating. And uh, that's when I stopped being the weird little tomboy and my hair was growing out. I lost my baby fat and I looked like a girl for once. And we became really close and we ended up moving in together shortly after graduation, I think it was. Um, very shortly after graduation. We were only 17, maybe 18 when we moved in together. We dated for just about 4.5 years, I think it was. And we had a very in we loved each other very much, but it wasn't always healthy. It was very codependent. And and yeah, like I look back and I say that we were in love at the time. I would say that, but I look back now and I see a lot of toxicity there on both ends. And um, he was never he was never ever abusive towards me or anything. But yeah, the codependency can be extremely toxic. It was like we couldn't be apart from each other. Even when we were constantly texting each other. We just had to be in contact all the time. And and then you bring in the astral projection and all of that, and we're trying to literally, even when we're sleeping, meet up in the spirit world. Like we were so just tied with each other. And we were genuinely trying to, like, I remember even before we we got into astral projection, lucid dreaming, all these things, we would have these conversations. We were both quite afraid of death, and we both went into all of this very simultaneously. Like I remember sitting on the couch with him at one point, and I was explaining how much I feared that I was, just not going to exist one day, that we're going to die and then there's nothing. And it was just like this dread that was overcoming me. And he's like, yeah, because he also believed in exactly what I did. He was very atheistic. He's like, yeah, but what if we're wrong? And that was the first time I was kind of like, yeah, what if we are? What if we are wrong and there is something? So we very simultaneously started getting into these things together. Um, and what else did you want me to mention? Like, uh,
Yeah, so kind of
uh,
like your journey. So like how you met him, obviously you already covered what you guys did together in terms of lucid dreaming together, astral projection together, how you kind of developed
yeah,
spirituality together up until the end of your relationship.
we would literally, like I said, we our lives really revolved around it. It's quite wild to think about. We'd go to work, but then like as soon as we would get home from work and meet up with each other, we're talking about it. As soon as we woke up in the morning, we would talk about our experiences that we dreamt about, or if we asked, rejected, or lucid dream. And it was at the point where we would like, Duncan, we would be envious of each other. Like if we went to bed and I remember waking up and I had this amazing lucid dream where I was like struggling with a lion and I turned it into like a little cat, and it was just a wild, very long, intense dream, and I was so happy about it. And I was telling him about it and I could see the envy in his eyes, like he was angry that he also didn't have that experience because he wanted to experience these things so badly as well. And I would feel the same way too if like he would wake up and explain all these lucid dreams that he was having, and he would, all these experiences, he'd tell me about them, and if I was not doing the same thing, I would be like envious of him, like angry that I wasn't as well. And it's so weird to be envious and angry, and not like we were angry at each other, but like angry that we weren't I don't know, doing it together or at the same level or whatever it was. But what a strange thing to be envious about over another human. And we, it really did get to a point where I saw how codependent we were. And we were very young. So when I was, when we were about 21 years old, I decided I wanted to travel. And I felt like I had a travel bug in me. And I planned a trip to Nicaragua. I wanted to go to Central America. That's the first time we really started seriously butting heads, and he felt offended that I wanted to leave because I remember specifically him saying this. So you would rather go look at a bunch of trees and rocks in a different country than be with me? And I was like, yeah, right now I do. I do want to go travel. I want to see the world. I'm 21 years old. I want to meet people. I want to explore. And I,
Amazing. All right, over to you.
um, so initially, yeah, I didn't plan on breaking up with him, but once I was in a different country and meeting these different people and just being alone and on my own for the first time ever, really, that's when I realized just how codependent we really were and how unhealthy it really was. And I broke up with him. And when I returned, it wasn't this nasty, awful fighting breakup. We were friends. We stayed in contact. We were nice to each other. We talked to each other. We still loved each other very much. Um, I was only gone for about a month, and about a month after I returned, he ended up taking his life. And I I look back now and I look at all the things that we were into, and he was missing for 3 days, and that is one thing I never considered that an option. It just he wouldn't do that. I thought I knew this person. I knew him for a very long time. He was my best friend, and that never occurred to me that he would do something like that. Um, at all. It wasn't an option, and it when I found out that that's what happened, it was like the rug was just ripped out from underneath me. Like I remember the world went black. Everything that this world just fell away. I blacked out and I woke up. I say woke up because I learned the news and I absolutely just blacked out. I must have passed out because I woke up in the middle of a parking lot and the friend that I was with was like dragging me out because there were cars and just sat me like on the side of the road until my parents came and picked me up. Um, but that was like my whole world changed that day. Everything I thought I knew changed that day. And I look back and I see how demonic all the things that we were doing, what we were opening ourselves up to, doing all of these things, this astral projection, these lucid dreamings, and the beliefs that we held and talked about, and the psychedelics that we did, like everything that we were doing. We got into mushrooms. We did salvia quite a few times, which if you've never done salvia, that one is demonic, very demonic. That is a scary, scary thing. That is a scary drug. But we did it several times. We were just fascinated with these other worlds, this other consciousness, and I count myself as very lucky because for a very long time, and especially his after his suicide, I was filled with suicidal ideation as well, and I was in this weird place about it because I truly felt these heavy moments where I really wanted to die, and I would be sitting there with like a bottle of pills, or I'd start making a plan. There's several times where I've sat down and wrote goodbye notes, and at the same time, when it came the time to do it, I would inevitably know and instinctively know that's not something that I wanted to do. And I brought myself to the hospital several times. And I remember the first time I did, I was like, I walked in and I remember telling them, I want to hurt myself, but I don't want to hurt myself, if that makes sense. Because I was so conflicted with these two things, that how badly I wanted the pain to stop, this confusion, this awful grief that I was constantly going through. Yet I still knew that like death was still very scary to me. And as much as I had experienced the things that I did, there is still that slight chance that what if I'm wrong, and what if there's nothing, and what if I just stop existing? And I was just always in this state of turmoil. And yeah, I count myself very lucky that I can almost see how the demons got into us there with doing what we were doing. And I can understand almost why he did what he did, or how I can understand how it can get out of control now. I really didn't understand before. And I can understand how these things take over. And I wasn't there in that moment, but I mean, even in the note that he left, it didn't sound like him. And the things that he said, the in the note, like he something that I carried with me for a very long time was that he he blamed me. He blamed me and basically said, like, how could you do this to me? And he said sorry to everybody else in the note, sorry to his mom, and sorry to his friends, and sorry to his grandparents. But when he mentioned me, it was, how could you do this to me? And that, I don't know, it haunted me. It still does in certain moments, but uh it's not something he would have done, that he would have said. And so I was so conflicted with it, because for a very long time, and I still do have these moments, even with Christ, where I'm like, I feel like I killed somebody because of it. Like I felt for a very long time like I didn't, I never told him to kill him. So that's nothing I ever wanted. And I never pushed him to do it or anything like that. At the same time, it felt like I did, because he told me I did in the last thing that he wrote. So I've been so conflicted about that for a very long time, but then I learn about these demonic things and how they enter people through. I mean, your body is wide open when you're astral projecting. Like, this isn't something that we should be doing. And we gave we gave legal right to demons when, and we didn't even know that's what we were doing. We thought that this was us freeing our minds. And really we were just opening our bodies to these demonic things. And we had no idea what we were communicating with. We had no idea what we were doing. And I know now that if we knew then what I know now, and if he knew all of this, there's just no chance. Like, we would put an end to it right then and be rebuking all of this, but we just didn't know. We didn't know any of this. So it's like such a uh it, it's a, you can't come back from it. You can't come back from suicide. And like, there's so many times where when I first got saved, where I was just asking God, like, why did you save me and not him? Like, how, like, he was just as confused and lost, if not more, than I was. But like, why did you let them take him? Why did you let this happen? And I still have moments where I don't understand, because I know that if he knew these things, if he knew God, if he knew Jesus, and if he had been saved, he would have been one of the strongest and greatest warriors on Christ's side. He would have done amazing work, because he was a beautiful person. And it's just such a shame that he's not here to talk about his testimony. as well. And I don't know. It's hard, especially um, thinking about suicide when you've come to Christ for obvious reasons. I still pray for him though, and I pray that if there's any way that he can still be saved or that his soul somehow be saved, that I pray for it because I don't know how God works. And there's nothing specific in the Bible about it. And a lot of people think you just go straight to hell when you commit suicide. But if there is any chance, I pray for it all the time because it just doesn't seem fair, you know?
Mm. Yeah, I struggle with the same thing as you because like a lot of people and a lot of people that are going to be watching this are going to have close family members who aren't saved. And
Yeah.
then I see it in the comments quite a lot where they're just saying, can you please pray for my son or for my husband or for my wife because they're not saved. And they know all it takes is one accident, one car crash, one mishap, and that person doesn't have the opportunity to repent of their sins. And one thing that gives me a little bit of faith in these type of situations is I know the Bible talks about the outpouring of the Holy Spirit and God's Spirit in the end times, and that his children will prophesy. And I feel like the things that we're doing, even with this video that we're recording right now, is exactly what the Bible's talking about with the children that prophesy, who have visions, who then talk about these visions that God is sending. God is giving us these visions for a reason because he wants to prepare people for his return. And
Mm.
when I look at some of these visions that people are discussing, and I see testimonies about people that are talking about just the way they describe it, it gives me the sense that even after death or even after you've left your body, there is still an opportunity to be saved because for most people, it's not really a case of you just wake up in hell. For most people, it's a process. You kind of, I remember watching one as an example where he had a heart attack and he had kind of prayed in his last minute for the pain to stop and then it just went. And he was like, oh, this feels amazing. And he sat up and he got up and then he realized he was dead. And he was like, oh my days. And then you
Yeah.
start to grasp your surroundings. Like you said in the astral projection, it feels more real than here. Like your eyesight is a million times better. Your hearing, your sense of smell, taste, touch is just heightened. And then that's when you're either called up to heaven or you're called down to hell. In some cases, you go up, then you go down. But I do feel there's a process that you go through before you kind of get sent to hell. And there was another testimony as well of a guy who was Muslim, who was a very devout Muslim, and he had a dream where he was falling, and there was a voice, and he believed it was an angel saying, "You need to cry out to Jesus. You need to cry out to him." And he was like, "I don't understand. Why do I need to do that?" And then he looked down and he saw where he was falling to. It was like a pit, and he could feel the heat, and he knew where he was going, but he was like, "I don't understand why are you saying call out to Jesus?" And then eventually he did, and then boom, straight back in his body. And he
Yeah.
was saved in an instant before he went back. And I looked at these kind of situations and I think sometimes there may be a circumstance in which God will give them an opportunity to repent in that last spiritual hour before they are cast into hell, and then there's no return from there. So, and I genuinely do believe, I don't know if it's everyone. There might be some people that have done such evil, they don't get that opportunity at that point. But I've got a feeling, I've got a sense inside that with some people, they will get that opportunity, that last opportunity, even on death, to pray and see if there is a way in which they can be forgiven of their sin before they're sent to hell.
I have to believe that it just exactly because there has to be a choice, you know? You have to be given a choice, and it feels like there's so many times where people who aren't saved, if they were actually given the full knowledge and awareness of what these choices are and what they mean, and not just this weird version that we see in the world today that is so convoluted and so distorted. It's really no choice at all. And if you were given the true choice, I believe so many people they would repent and go to Christ. And I have to believe that that choice is there for people, that there is a split moment. Like I, I, I was thinking when you sent me some reference points to go over, and you mentioned when I first came to Christ, and I was thinking about it. I was kind of drawn back to a different experience first, but I didn't really realize that it was Christ. That I've had several close calls throughout my life, and I attributed my life being spared to something else, to universe, to creator, to whatever. But
Mm,
I wouldn't the way that he did what he did in my life was so that I couldn't deny it this last time. I couldn't attribute it, what I went through, to anything, to anyone else other than Jesus. And it's because of all these other times that I had. And like you talk about a car accident, and I shouldn't be here just from a car accident that I was in. I fell asleep at the wheel um in 2018 it was, and I rolled off of a cliff in my car. I rolled down. I remember it was like that slow motion, just like in the movies. I swear it was like a Hollywood set. And I just it's exactly what people kind of describe, where I everything went slow, and I remember hitting and rolling and hitting 4 times. It was almost like I was counting it every time. And I remember seeing like a river when I was driving before I fell asleep. So I thought I was going to fall into water, and I was waiting to hit water, but I never did. And my car stopped, and I was flipped over it was flipped over on the driver's side. And it's so strange because you I was traveling around all summer in that car. I had slept in that car. That car was like a second home to me. I had it for years. I knew it like the back of my hand, yet it's just flipped over this way, and all of a sudden it was like a whole different universe in that car, and I had no idea where I was, and I had no idea which way was up or down, and I was so confused as to what was even going on. um the airbags went off and deployed properly. I was 100% sure that I just rolled down like at least a 50-foot cliff, if not more, and I was sure that I was hurt somewhere. I'm checking myself, and I'm okay, but at the same time, I know I could be in shock. I know I'm in shock, and my engine is making this awful noise, and I just have this voice telling me, get out now, get out now, and don't worry about anything. I was moving actually out of a house that I was living in, so I had my whole life in that car. I had childhood memories. I had all of my belongings. Everything I owned to my name was in that car, and all I could hear in my heart, in my head, in my like everywhere was just get out and get out now. And I had my dog, and so all that I was worried about was get my dog and get me out. And and again, I'm looking like, how do I get out? Like I don't even know where my door is anymore. And finally, I'm looking up, and I'm like, okay, it's up there. And I try to push on it, and it won't open. And I realize there is like a literal log on top of it. So this absolutely makes no sense at all, because I'm very small person. I can't even do a chin up. Like I'm weak. I need to work out. I still do. But I I I have like no upper body strength. And so I'm like pushing on the door, and I realize I can see this log on it, and I'm like, wow, I don't know how to get out of this car. And I just hear this, like I tried several times. I could not move that door. And I hear it in my heart again, just push the door. And I didn't question it. I pushed it open, and it was like there was no log there anymore. It just flew open, and I was like, okay. I looked down, and I was scared to shut it. I had to grab my dog. I didn't actually expect it to open at all. And so I was scared to shut it because I thought maybe it's not going to open again. But I had to get my dog. He's like my best friend in the world. So I let the door go, and I grabbed my dog. And again, no upper body strength. And he's a beefy boy, but I threw him out like it was nothing. I threw him out of the car door, and then I pulled myself up, and I knew I had to get away from the car. So I grab him, I pick him up, and I thought he was hurt too. I couldn't tell. I just felt like I had no time. I didn't get my phone. I didn't grab my wallet. Nothing. It was just closing my back, my dog, and I left, and I got out, and I made it to maybe 30, 40 feet away from the car, and there was a big bush, and I just, again, in my heart, felt like hide behind the bush. And so I I hid, and as soon as I crouched down, the engine blew up. It blew up, and
Damn.
had I been knocked out for even a minute, like this all happened so quickly, and I was unhurt, unscathed, not a scratch, not a single scratch on my body, not one, not a bruise. Like, how does that happen? I'm checking out my dog, and he's fine too. And I remember him flying out of the back of the car where he was sleeping when I started rolling, and he hit the windshield, and the sound that came out of his mouth, I thought he was dead. I didn't think he was alive. So when I grab him and he's like, conscious, and I'm checking him out and I'm pressing on his legs afterward, and he's fine and I'm fine. And it made no sense to me. There was a long period where I actually thought that I was in purgatory or something. Like this was like it just makes no sense that I am alive at all and without and unscathed, not a scratch. It made no sense to me. And so I believe now, looking back, that that was absolute divine intervention. And I didn't attribute it to Jesus, to God. I attributed it to like luck, to like the universe just working out in my favor. And that I look back and I see God, I see Jesus all over that one. Just there's just no other way. It confused me for a very long time why I'm even here. And and then you were talking about being given a choice, and I would say about a year before
Just to
I
stop you
was
there.
yeah.